Hey everybody, Chris Reagan here. Welcome to another episode of Glasses Off, the show where we forego the comedy in favor of a more accurate and more honest, less hyperactive account on my opinions on any given topic. You know, because having a YouTube persona is fun, but sometimes I like to just kind of lift the veil a little bit and, kind of just address certain things as myself. If you're a new subscriber to this channel and you're not familiar with this kind of content, then I'll put some cards with links to other episodes that I've done that are very similar to this one. And if you are familiar with this kind of content, then I guess welcome back. It's time for another go. If I seem inconceivably exhausted right about now, it's because it's 5 in the morning. And, this is the best idea that I had to lull myself to sleep, to drone on and on about a topic that nobody really cares about. Now, today I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind for quite some time, and that is essentially the ethics of comedy. When is it okay to make jokes about a serious situation? When is it okay to make jokes about a tragedy? What's the protocol? Is there such a thing as too soon? And if there is such a thing as too soon, when does that go away? When is it okay to joke about death and about serious subjects? Now, I'm not 100% sure of what it is I do here on YouTube. I'm still trying to figure that out myself, but I like to think that what I do here on this site is make people laugh. I know that that's a subjective opinion, but bear with me, please. And as somebody whose job it is to make people laugh, I'm sure probably most of you have noticed that my humor has always been a tad, dark. And I think a big reason for that is the fact that humor for me has always been a sort of coping mechanism. Because I'm old enough to remember events like 9/11, and I lived in New York at the time, and I remember just the sheer palpable anger and sadness in the air in New York at that time. It was an emotional time. And I personally didn't lose any family in the attack, I didn't lose any friends in the attack, but anybody who lived in New York at the time who's old enough to remember that will tell you that hit everybody hard. You could not escape the feeling of sadness and anger regardless of who you were. It doesn't matter if you were personally affected or not, because if you lived in New York, you were personally affected by that whole shit show. And yet, I can make a 9/11 joke and find it funny. I can hear somebody else make a 9/11 joke, and I can laugh at it. And look, here's the reality, guys. There is not a single thing about our lives that is not insanely brutal. We are born into a world that provides us with nothing but a series of obstacles to overcome. The weather tries to kill us, germs try to kill us, the sun gives us cancer, the planet is made up of 75% fucking water, the thing that we need to survive, but also a thing that will drown us in excess. Young Sheldon is a prequel to the Big Bang Theory, and it's a real thing that exists, that people paid money for, that people are excited to see. This is a hostile life. This is pure hostility. Nothing but the purest contempt from Mother Nature herself. Everyone we love and everyone we ever have loved will die one day, and in 100 years' time, nobody will remember you. Thousands of people die every day. Diseases, tragedies, genocide, rape, violence, in general, famine, terrorism. The world is a harsh place. I think that's the message that I'm kind of trying to hammer home. But if we can't look at all of that harshness and at least turn it into something that we can laugh at, if we can't at least make the best of this disaster piece, then what's even the point? Now, there are two reasons why this topic has been on my mind as of late. The Skeptic Feminist shooting and the Manchester Arena bombing. Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Manchester Arena bombing by now. 22 people died as a result of a suicide bombing at an Ariana Grande concert that killed 22 people, mostly young women. But for those of you who don't know about the Skeptic Feminist shooting, let me kind of just lay the groundwork for you just so you understand what I'm talking about. Not too long ago, an individual with a small feminist YouTube channel ended up murdering his girlfriend while high on some sort of drug. I think it was mushrooms. There were some reports early on about a PTSD-related snap, but it appears that that's no longer the case. Now, these are both obviously heinous crimes that if I told you how genuinely enraged I was by both of these events, you probably wouldn't believe me because my YouTube persona is such a sarcastic dick. But of course, in the age of the internet, news travels nearly instantaneously, and I think to a degree that's fucked with the classic formula of comedy equals tragedy plus time. Because what used to take years for people to get over in the accelerated age of the internet, now takes mere moments. The idea that you can make jokes about 9/11 because it happened 16 years ago, or that you can make fun of the Holocaust because it happened in the previous century, but you can't make fun of a tragedy that's happened on the day of, I feel like that whole notion, while well-meaning, has become rather antiquated. And believe it or not, I do feel very conflicted on this, both as a comedian and as a person. Because on one hand, I do believe that there is a time and a place for everything. You wouldn't make fun of your dead grandfather at your grandfather's wake to your grieving family members. You wouldn't do that. But I also believe that jokes, by definition, are meant not to be taken seriously, and that nothing should be free from being made fun of. Because ultimately, what's more offensive? Somebody blowing themselves up and taking 20 children with them? Or making a joke about it? To me, there's obviously a clear winner because one results in the loss of actual life, and the other one just hurts people's feelings. And regardless of how you feel about the concept of too soon and what is and isn't off the table when it comes to comedy, you have to admit that in the case of the Skeptic Feminist shooting, there is a dark hint of irony. The fact that a male feminist, someone who spent a lot of his time on YouTube calling other people misogynist, calling my friends misogynist woman haters, the fact that that individual then went on to kill his girlfriend is comedically ironic. And that's not to suggest he did it because he was a feminist. That's not to blame the action on the ideology. He obviously was fucked up in the head. He was high on fucking drugs. He was a fucked up individual. There is no this caused this accusation being made in simply pointing out the irony of a situation. And look, joking about a tragedy isn't minimizing the severity of this situation. It's not making it so what happened is less terrible or implying that we somehow care less about the implications of this crime just because we're able to point out the dark humor in the situation. There was a huge hissy fit on Twitter the day that this happened because V and a couple of other people did a stream and they kind of made some dark jokes about it, but considering every single joke on that stream that I heard about the tragedy was at the expense of the killer and not the victim, I don't see the problem here. Call me callous, but they're jokes. And if you want my genuine opinion, I feel like people like Thunderfoot are being drama queens about it. And look, if you knew this person personally, and you still find the jokes insensitive, that's fine. You're entitled to that opinion, obviously. Not everybody has to like every joke. But your feelings don't dictate what is and isn't funny to other people. And what an individual finds funny is not a reflection of the entirety of that individual's character. Just because you laugh at a dark joke about 9/11 doesn't mean you don't understand the severity of the situation. It doesn't mean you weren't emotionally affected by what happened. This should be basic common sense. Now, after the Manchester bombing, I did see this joke tweet floating around recently that caused a big fuss on Twitter, and it went something along the lines of multiple confirmed fatalities at Manchester Arena. The last time I listened to Ariana Grande, I almost died too. Now, I'm not going to lie, I thought of basically the exact same joke when I first heard the news about the Manchester Arena bombing. And again, that's because finding humor in very, very dark circumstances is a bit of a coping mechanism for me. It's just how I deal with shit. But I swear to God, I thought of that exact joke almost verbatim. And I even thought about tweeting it, but then I thought, look, there's a time and a place for everything, and my personal subjective view of comedy led me to the choice that now is not the time to joke about it. At least not now. Maybe in a few days, but not right now. And somebody else's subjective view of comedy led them to the decision that, hey, I'm just gonna make this joke now while it's still fresh. And look, a lot of people have twisted senses of humor. When I first read that tweet, I did get a little bit of a chuckle. But I feel like I saw more outrage over a joke about a tragic event than I saw about the tragic event itself. And I understand that people are capable of caring about multiple things at once. I understand that you can be angry at the joke and still be angry at the terrorist. But I think my point is that goes both ways. Making a joke about something doesn't mean you don't care. I cared immensely. I was livid during the Manchester Arena bombing. But again, I still made that exact same joke in my head. And I guess ultimately where I fall after thinking about this for a very, very long time is that a good joke does require a sense of timing and a sense of place. But at the end of the day, a bad joke that offends a lot of people is ultimately still just a joke. It's not to be taken seriously by definition, and we're all free to point out when a joke sucks and when a joke is poorly timed or when a joke doesn't necessarily do a good job at being funny, right? But when it elevates to this weird moral crusade where it's like, oh, this person made a mean joke, let's try and get him fired from his job, let's try to ruin his career, I think when it gets to that point, you're a fucked up person. And that's not even mentioning the fact that humor is entirely subjective. Too soon to you might be the very thing someone else needs to find something funny. And that doesn't make that, and again, that doesn't make them bad people. It just means that their sense of humor is different. It might be dark and twisted, but it's still just a sense of humor. It's a fucking, like, take a fucking joke. I guess I still just don't believe anything is off the table. I don't believe in too soon, and I don't believe in putting up all these weird boundaries for comedy. But in a weird way, I guess, without those boundaries, comedy would also be very boring, right? Because the whole point of it is to push boundaries. I don't fucking know. So yeah, if you're gonna tell a good joke, plan it well, write it well, and if you're gonna get offended by a joke, leave it at that. Just leave it at that. Don't go on a moral crusade trying to fucking vilify everybody who makes a joke that you find distasteful. Deal with it. People find it funny, you don't, and that's okay. And I guess that's really all I wanted to talk about today. Sorry if this was a very odd subject matter. I don't even know if I really made sense or came to any real conclusions during this entire video, but I just kind of felt like I wanted to talk about it. It was something that's been on my mind for quite a while, and the recent tragedies are just piling on, and I couldn't get it out of my fucking head. So I guess that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for hearing out my retarded opinion. If you guys want to keep up to date with all my social media shit, you can find all that shit in the description below. And also, I'm doing a podcast every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time with Anissa Joma, and one of those episodes is available on the second channel to watch in its entirety. But it's a live podcast on Twitch every Saturday at 8 p.m. Pacific. So if you want to tune in for those, I think they're pretty interesting conversations. Whenever I hear of something insane happening in New York, especially like as of recently, I'm always surprised that the damage is so minimal. Right. Like there was that bomb in Times Square that just didn't go off. And then like not even like a few years ago, the train that I usually take just straight up flipped off the tracks.
What?
And
really?
It flipped off the fucking tracks. And it really wasn't, it was like I was expecting like, oh, millions are dead.
Literally
something like
millions.
That. Not
millions
literally
were on
millions.
The train.
Ray Gun Recap is coming sooner than you think, and I guess that's about it. It is now 5:43 in the morning.